Hey guys, welcome to lesson 28 and 29. 28 is talking about complex fractions and also what you do when square roots are inside your fractions on the bottom, because you cannot have that. Okay, and then we're doing distance problems. Cool, so remember, what's my theory on distance problems? You can ask me questions, but I'm only going to teach it one way. That's horrible, right? I know. But you can show me if you set up a problem a different way and say why am I still getting the wrong answer? I can look at that. There's no B's. Okay, look, here's what a complex fraction is. A complex fraction is when there's a fraction inside a fraction, okay? You cannot keep a fraction like this, where there's a fraction on the numerator and a fraction on the denominator. No, you gotta bring it all together. Well, how are you gonna do that? Well, remember that this fraction bar right here is not just a fraction bar, it also means divide, right? So when you see fractions on top of fractions, you're gonna flip-flop and multiply. Because this line right here means divide. So it's also looking at it like this. It's like divide by x plus y over b. That's what you're looking at right here. So what would you do to divide that? You would flip-flop and multiply. So you don't have to write all that. Just whenever you see a problem like this, you're going to take this fraction down here, flip-flop it, and multiply it up here. So you're going to put b over x plus y. Flip-flop it. And then look, you get to cancel out, and your answer is super easy, simple, and fast. A over x plus y, okay? Let's look at another example of that. Okay, you might be able to tell right away that this one's just as easy as the last one. Take the bottom one, flip-flop it, and multiply. So it's going to be a plus b over c. Flip it, cross it out. It's a over c is your answer. Super, super easy. Now look down at example 3. It says to simplify 3 over 2 square root 5. And you may say to yourself, well, what's the problem with 3 over 2 square root 5? You cannot simplify anything like taking out anything, dividing anything. However, guys, here's a big rule. You cannot have a square root on your denominator, okay? What is the rule? You cannot have a square root on your denominator, but it's super easy to get rid of. When you see a square root on your denominator, all you do is multiply the top and the bottom by that square root, and it's gonna make it disappear, okay? So when you see a square root on the bottom, you just multiply the numerator and denominator by that square root. It's called rationalizing the denominator, okay? I'm not into you memorizing that term, but if you hear it, you don't want to be like, what am I doing? You rationalize the denominator. That means you're taking the radical signs and getting rid of it. So here we go. 3 times square root 5 is 3 square root 5. 2 is just 2, but then look right here. Square root 5 times square root 5, what did I teach you? When you're multiplying the square root of the same number, what's your answer going to be? 5. Okay, it's going to be 5. You just cancel out those square roots and you're left with the thing inside, which is 5. Because remember, when you cancel out the square roots, 5 times 5 is 25. What's the square root of 25? 5. Okay, so you just automatically know that. Okay, example 2 is just as easy as example 1. All you're going to do is flip-flop and multiply. So here you go, you're going to flip it over here. A plus b on the top, c on the bottom. Cross that out, cancel it, and it's a over c is your answer, okay? Now look at example 3. Example 3 says to simplify it as well, which is 3 over 2 square root 5. And you may think to yourself, well, I don't know really what you want me to do, Miss Jessica, because it looks simplified to me. Okay, so here's a rule you need to learn if you don't know it yet. You can never, ever, ever have square roots on the bottom, okay? Radical signs on a denominator. You can't have it. So you got to get rid of it. And that's how you simplify things, okay? How are you going to get rid of it? It's super easy, okay? If you have a square root on the bottom, you just multiply the numerator and denominator by that same square root, okay? When you have a square root on the bottom, you multiply the numerator and denominator by that square root. It's called rationalizing the denominator. That's what it says right here, okay? You don't necessarily need to memorize that term, but you do need to know that that's what you're doing in case anybody asks you to rationalize the denominator, like in the instructions or something like that. You can know what it means. So what happens when you multiply it? It's going to be 3 square root of 5. Ooh. But then look over here. You have 2 times square root of 5 times square root of 5. Remember what happens. Square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. Because remember that the square root disappears and you're left with 5 times 5 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5, okay? So that's how we know that the answer is 5. So we have 2 times 5 is on the bottom, so it's 10. And there's your answer right there, 3 square root of 5 over 10. Okay, so just make sure you remember no square roots on your denominator. So look at example 4. 2 square over 3 square root 12. Okay? You can basically kind of do this 2 different ways, but go ahead, let's do it this way. Let's just, without even thinking about whether or not you can simplify that square root 12, let's multiply it, the numerator and the denominator by square root 12. So we have 2 square root 12 over 3 times square root 12 times square root 12 is 12, so that's going to be 36. But then you can simplify things because remember, you can simplify this square root. That's going to be the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. Well, the square root of 4 is 2, so you put that on the outside. So now what are you left with? You have 2 times 2 is 4 square root 3 over 36. And then you're gonna cancel out the 4 with the 36 to make it 9. And your answer is square root 3 over 9. Okay? So make sure you process that one. It's all about simplifying the square roots, but you know how to do that now. No one's told me that you need help with that, so if you do, just let me know now. That's totally fine, okay? Go ahead and do your practice. I'll come back and give you the answers to those and make sure that you understand why we got them. Super fast, and we'll go into our distance, rate times time equals distance problems in lesson. Okay, 29. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Wow, the table was moving. Okay, your answers are A is m over z plus x, B is m over z, and C is 2 square root 2 over 3. Here's how we got it. We took this one, flip flop and multiply. We cancel out the p and the p. You're left with m over z plus x. Take this one, flip flop and multiply. You cancel out the x plus y. You're left with m and z. This one, you multiply by square root 2 because you can't have that on the bottom. 4 times square root 2, and then 3 times 2, which is 6. But then you have to simplify that down, so it's not 4 over 6, it's 2 over 3 with the square root 2 there. So 2 square root 2 over 3. Here we go, let's get into lesson 29.